Once upon a time, in a quiet town, there was a small church that people visited only on special days. But one day, a new pastor named Pastor Samuel arrived. Pastor Samuel was young, tall, and had a warm smile that made everyone feel welcome. He wore a long white robe, and people said he was blessed with the power to heal. Rumors spread quickly about his amazing powers, and soon, people from all over the town came to hear him preach. Pastor Samuel's very first sermon was unforgettable. He spoke gently, yet his voice filled with whole church. God loves each of you dearly, he said, and through his love, miracles are possible. People felt something special in his words, as if their hearts were touched by his kindness. They left the church that day feeling happy, hopeful, and ready to return. As weeks passed, the church started to grow. At first, it was just the regular members, but soon, strangers began showing up. They heard stories of Pastor Samuel's healing touch, and they wanted to see it for themselves. The church pews filled up quickly, with some people even standing outside to hear his sermons. Then, one Sunday, Pastor Samuel did something that shocked everyone. A woman named Mrs. Carter, who had been sick with a fever for days, was brought to the church. She was weak and could barely stand. Pastor Samuel placed his hands on her head, closed his eyes, and whispered the prayer. The crowd watched in silence, holding their breath. When Pastor Samuel finished praying, Mrs. Carter stood up slowly, looking surprised. "I feel better," she exclaimed. The crowd cheered, clapping and praising God. They believed they had witnessed a miracle. Pastor Samuel smiled, but there was a strange glint in his eyes that no one noticed. News of the miracle spread quickly. By the next Sunday, the church was even fuller than before. People brought their sick relatives, hoping Pastor Samuel could cure them too. Parents brought children with cough, old folks came with aching joints, and others brought friends who had problems they couldn't solve. Pastor Samuel continued to heal people each week. Each time, he placed his hands on them, said a quiet prayer, and they felt relief. People began to think he had a special connection with God. But after the excitement faded, some people noticed something strange. Those who had been healed often felt very tired afterwards, as if they had lost something deep inside. The townspeople dismissed this feeling, thinking it was just part of the healing process. Miracles are powerful, they said. It's natural to feel tired afterward. Pastor Samuel assured them that all was well. But if they had looked closer, they might have seen a shadow around him, something dark and strange that only appeared when no one was noticing. And so, Pastor Samuel's fame grew. People respected him, even feared him a little, but they never questioned him. They believed he was sent by God to bring blessings to their town. Yet, deep down, a few people began to wonder if there was more to Pastor Samuel's power than met the eye. One bright Sunday morning, a young boy named Tom came to church with his family. Tom was 7 years old and had been sick with a bad cough for weeks. His mother was worried, so she brought him to see Pastor Samuel. She had heard of his miracle and hoped he could help Tom feel better. Tom sat quietly beside his mother, watching as Pastor Samuel spoke to the crowd. The pastor's voice was gentle but strong, filling the whole church. Tom felt a strange warmth in his chest as he listened, like he was sitting by a cozy fire. He didn't understand all the pastor's words, but he felt safe and happy. When the sermon ended, Pastor Samuel invited anyone who needed healing to come forward. Tom's mother quickly took him and led him to the front of the church. Tom felt a little nervous as he stood before the pastor, but his mother gave him an encouraging smile. Pastor Samuel placed his hands on Tom's head and closed his eyes. "Lord, please bless this young boy and bring him your healing touch," he said softly. Tom felt a warm sensation spreading from the pastor's hands, moving through his body. It felt like the warmth was chasing away all the cold and sickness inside him. Suddenly, Tom stopped. He took a deep breath and felt completely fine. He looked up at Pastor Samuel with wide eyes. "I'm better," he exclaimed. His face lightened up with joy. The crowd gasped and clapped, cheering the miracle. Tom's mother hugged him tightly, tears of happiness in his eyes. She thanked Pastor Samuel over and over again, and the pastor smiled kindly. But as Tom walked back to his seat, he felt a strange emptiness inside. It was small, like a tiny missing piece, but it made him feel a little sad. The night, Tom felt more tired than ever before. He fell asleep as soon as he lay on his pillow, but his dreams were strange. He dreamt of dark shadows and whispered, and when he woke up, he couldn't remember what the dream was all about. He only knew that it made him feel scared. Tom's mother noticed he was unusually quiet the next day. "Are you feeling alright, dear?" she asked, concerned. Tom nodded but didn't say much. He didn't know how to explain the empty feeling inside him. All he knew was that something had changed, and he wasn't sure if it was for the better. As the days passed, Tom tried to forget about the strange feeling, but deep down, he couldn't shake the sense that something had been taken from him. And though he didn't know it, Tom was not the only one who felt this way. One by one, others who had been healed by Pastor Samuel began to feel the emptiness growing inside them. The weeks went by and Pastor Samuel's church became even more popular. Every Sunday, people came from nearby villages to see his miracles. The pews were always full and people had to stand outside just to catch a glimpse of the pastor. Pastor Samuel loved the attention and admiration, and he decided to try something new. One evening, he announced that he would hold a special prayer at midnight. God's power is strongest in the darkness, he explained. Come and feel his blessings like never before. The people were curious and excited, and they eagerly awaited the midnight service. When the night finally arrived, the church was packed with people. Pastor Samuel stood at the front, holding a candle that cast eerie shadow on his face. He welcomed everyone warmly, and then they began to pray. His voice echoed through the silent church, and the people listened with bated breath. As the midnight service went on, Pastor Samuel invited those who needed healing to come forward. One by one, people stepped up to receive his touch. Each time he placed his hands on them, whispered a prayer, and they felt a wave of warmth and peace. The miracles were even stronger than usual that night. A blind woman claimed she could see light again. A man with a painful back could suddenly bend and stretch without any discomfort. The crowd was amazed and they praised God for the pastor's gift. But after each miracle, the people who had been healed felt a strange fatigue. Their joy quickly faded, replaced by a deep, heavy tiredness. They didn't understand why, but they brushed it off, thinking it was just part of the powerful prayer. The midnight service continued, and Pastor Samuel kept performing miracles. But as he did, a shadow seemed to grow around him, growing darker and darker with each prayer. No one else noticed, but if they had looked closely, they might have seen the faint glint of something sinister in the pastor's eyes. By the end of the night, everyone left the church feeling drained, yet strangely satisfied. They believed they had received a special blessing, and they didn't question the tiredness and lingered within them. But little did they know something precious had been taken from each of them, feeding a power that no one understood. Pastor Samuel watched them leave the church quietly, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. He knew his influence was growing, and he was pleased. For him, the midnight service was only the beginning of something far greater and darker. One sunny Sunday, Mr. Thompson came to church. She was an elderly lady who had been struggling with a bad headache for many days. Her family was worried, so they brought her to see Pastor Samuel. Mrs. Thompson sat quietly in her chair, looking tired and uncomfortable. Pastor Samuel greeted her warmly. "Don't worry, Mrs. Thompson. God is here to help you." He took her hands gently and closed his eyes. The congregation watched in awe as Pastor Samuel began to pray. His voice was calm and soothing, filling the church with peace. As Pastor Samuel prayed, Mrs. Thompson felt a warm sensation spreading through her head. Slowly, her frown turned into a smile. "I feel much better," she said, standing up with ease. The crowd erupted in cheers, praising the miracle they had witnessed. Mrs. Thompson thanked Pastor Samuel with tears in her eyes. She hugged her family tightly, grateful for the healing. Everyone was happy and believed that Pastor Samuel was truly blessed by God. They left the church feeling joyful and hopeful. But that night, Mrs. Thompson couldn't sleep. She felt a strange emptiness inside her, as if a part of her was missing. She wondered by what she felt so tired after being healed. Pastor Samuel noticed that Mrs. Thompson seemed a bit sad the next day and asked if she was okay. "Oh, I'm fine," she replied with a smile. "Thank you again for your help." But deep down, Mrs. Thompson felt something was wrong. She couldn't shake the feeling that her happiness came with a hidden cost. As weeks passed, more people came to see Pastor Samuel. Each miracle brought more followers, but also more people feeling tired and empty afterward. The town was filled with joy and admiration for Pastor Samuel, but a small part of the community began to sense that something wasn't quite right. Brother Luke was Pastor Samuel's assistant. He admired the pastor and believed in his miracles. But lately, Brother Luke had been feeling uneasy. He noticed that after each healing, the pastor seemed more tired than before. He couldn't understand why this was happening. One day, Brother Luke decided to talk to Pastor Samuel. "Pastor, I have noticed that some people feel very tired after your prayers. Is everything alright?" he asked gently. Pastor Samuel smiled reassuringly. It's normal, Brother Luke. Miracles are powerful and they require energy. It's just part of the process. Brother Luke nodded, but he still felt something was wrong. He couldn't shake the feeling that the pastor was hiding a secret. That night, Brother Luke stayed late at the church to pray and think. He watched as Pastor Samuel prepared for the midnight service. The pastor seemed different in the dark, his eyes shining strangely. Brother Luke wondered what Pastor Samuel was truly doing during these special prayers. The next Sunday, Brother Luke decided to keep a closer watch. He wanted to understand the connection between the miracle and the strange tiredness people felt. As the church filled up, Brother Luke observed Pastor Samuel with a kind eye, searching for any clues. After the service, Brother Luke approached Pastor Samuel again. "Pastor, can I help you prepare for the midnight prayer?" he offered. "Of course, Brother Luke. Your help is always appreciated," Pastor Samuel replied warmly. But as they walked together, Brother Luke couldn't help but feel that there was more to the midnight prayer than what Pastor Samuel was telling him. As the weeks went by, Brother Luke continued to notice the odd patterns. The more miracles Pastor Samuel performed, the more people felt drained afterwards. Brother Luke began to worry about his friends and neighbors, wondering if the pastor's powers were truly divine. He decided to talk to someone of the healed people. "Do you feel okay after the prayers?" Brother Luke asked a few church members. Most people smiled and nodded, thanking him for his concern. But a few admitted they felt tired and a little sad. Brother Luke's worries grew, and he knew he had to find out the truth behind Pastor Samuel's miracles. One evening, after a midnight service, Brother Luke stayed behind a cleanup. The church was quiet, and the moonlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows on the floor. As he was about to leave, he heard a faint whispering sound coming from Pastor Samuel's office. Curious and a little scared, he peeked inside and saw Pastor Samuel sitting at his desk, talking to a dark, shadowy figure. The figure was hard to see, but its presence made Brother Luke shiver. "Thank you for your help," Pastor Samuel whispered. "The power you give me is growing stronger every day." Brother Luke's heart raced. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Pastor Samuel, what's going on?" he called out softly. Startled, Pastor Samuel looked up, but the shadowy figure was vanished. "Brother Luke, it's late. You should go home and rest," he said with a kind smile. But Brother Luke knew something was very wrong. He could forget the sight of the shadowy figure and the strange conversation. Brother Luke decided he had to find out more about Pastor Samuel's true source of power. He began searching through all the books and documents in the church library, hoping to uncover the mystery. As he read, Brother Luke discovered one story about dark forces and deals made in secret. The more he learned, the more he feared Pastor Samuel's powers were not from God, but from something much darker.